when on Saturdays or on a significant Saturday, whatever those Saturdays are, on those days, he will come and sit on a seat which is full of sharp nails. He will sit on this and attend to people's questions and problems and whatever. He will sit on this for hours on end. People come here with variety of things, largely for influence of occult, or they feel they are possessed or something like this. Because such things are done, the energies are kept in a certain way in the sanctum. Even today I meet thousands of women who suffer a lot at that time because they still have to go to work, they still have to deal with everything. There are many of them who are on medication at that time just to keep their psychological balance. They would definitely enjoy rest. I met a lady in Syria where after her first period when she was 13 plus, she's never had a period till she's 50 because she always had children and children continuously. It's truly unfortunate that we are dividing the human species on gender bias. But it might have become necessary now because of centuries of exploitation that's been heaped up on the woman in different societies, in different forms, because we created very exploitative societies. When human societies are fashioned like this, naturally the male will rule. When strife is the way of the human society, naturally the male will rule, simply because of the physical prowess of the masculine. A society can be created on equal keel only when we establish a certain stability in the social structure. When survival is not the pinnacle of life, survival is just a small part of our life. Only when civilizations are well established in a way where art, music, aesthetics are as important as economics, defense and other aspects which rule the society today. Only then a woman will find her rightful place in a society. As masculine brings one type of value to human life, feminine brings another type of value to our lives. Unless we are able to see that both these values are equally important in our lives, there will be no true equality or justice, or you cannot say a civilization exists. So if intelligence, sensitivity, perception are the most valued aspects of life, then only gender equality will come. What is needed now is to bring to the awareness of the masculine that feminine is an equally important part of life. The media, education systems and other social setups must strive to do this, that our lives will not be beautiful just because we make so much money, just because we build this or that. Our lives have to become beautiful means the feminine, the aspect of the feminine has to be around us, only then everything will be beautiful. What we refer to as masculine and feminine are two fundamental qualities in nature. It's got nothing to do with the gender. There may be men who embody the feminine qualities much more than most women. There may be women who embody the masculine much better than most men. It is important that a society begins to recognize this, that one's body may be either female or male, but one's quality may be feminine or masculine or a combination of both. This is a nation, this is a culture where inward looking is one of the most significant aspects of our lives. Because of this inward looking, if you look inward deep enough, you will see every individual, whether you are in a male body or in a female body, the masculine and the feminine exists in equal proportions within you. And hence, even our gods are represented like this. Shiva is shown as the Ardhanari, he's a half man, half woman. But I think it's time we name this day as the Day of the Feminine rather than Women's Day, because it's important that the feminine comes forth and plays in the world. So, on this Day of the Feminine, I am taking the liberty of renaming it. Instead of being a Woman's Day, let this be a Day of the Feminine. This is a culture which has worshipped the feminine for thousands of years. It is important that we must bring that spiritual ethos in our cultures where every human being, his life and his experience of life is not limited to the physical body. He sees life as something more than the physical. He experiences life beyond the physicality of who he is, because the gender is of the physical nature. If your experience is beyond the physical nature, gender will be just a minor issue in your life. There are many things or many levels in which the exploitation of the women has to be stopped. By law, I think generally we've stopped it, but in reality, in social reality is yet to happen. So it doesn't really need a fight on the street, it needs a proper enforcement of law. But if a proper enforcement of law has to happen, a conducive social situation has to happen. And that conducive social situation is not going to happen unless there is widespread dissemination of knowledge in the form of education and the economic possibility. If these two things happen, I don't think women will have to fight for their freedom, they will be free anyway. Now, we must understand this. People are thinking that these temples are places of prayer. These temples are not places of prayer. They're different types of energies. Shani means Saturn. These are temples created for the different planets in the solar system. The impact of different planets upon our own physiology, our psychological structure and the way many things happen is obvious to us in many different ways. There is a complex calculation about taking your time of birth, date of birth, and the latitude and longitude of birth. Taking these numbers, they make a complex calculation as to what are the planets which have maximum influence on you in your life. All these things are relevant to you to some extent. As I said, if you have an inner technology, you level out all these things, all these impacts. Saturn, which is a small faraway planet, takes 30 years to complete one revolution around the sun. Because it is a 30-year cycle, because there are what is called as 4 segments in a day and 4 segments in a year according to what happens on this planet. Once in 30 years, Saturn will have a certain influence upon you. So, people who come from India, what is it, Sada Sata, what's it called that in North India? Sade Sat. Sade Sat influence in the north, people who come from Tamil Nadu, Elar Shani, theriyundane, Elar Shani. So 7.5 years of influence of Saturn upon you will be there. At this time, you become more susceptible, it's not that you must have it. You become more susceptible to disease, depression, disasters, death. You're in the hands of D company. So, people know when their Sade Sat or Elar Shani will come, at that time they will start doing certain things so that they can bridge over these pits that may arise in their life. So there is a temple for Shani Deva. So he's been, what to say, personified as a god. Shani temples are mainly used for occult and exorcism. Even today, there will be one or two priests who are trained here. When on Saturdays or on a significant Saturday, whatever those Saturdays are, on those days, he will come and sit on a seat which is full of sharp nails. He will sit on this and attend to people's questions and problems and whatever. He will sit on this for hours on end. People come here with variety of things, largely for influence of occult, or they feel they are possessed or something like this. Because such things are done, the energies are kept in a certain way in the sanctum, which is not very conducive for a woman. Can a woman not enter there at all? She can if she is trained particularly for that, but it would be much more difficult to train a woman on these things than training a man on these things, simply because of a few biological advantages man has in these areas of life. Especially a woman who is in a state of pregnancy or in menstrual cycle should never enter such a space because she is very susceptible or vulnerable at those times that she could be deeply impacted by these forces. And today somebody thinks this is discrimination. One must know the difference between discrimination and discretion. This is a certain discretion, but maybe the way it is enforced, I don't know how they've enforced, I have not been there. Maybe the way they're enforcing is crude and seems discriminatory. Probably, I'm saying, because it's not designed for them. It's not discriminatory. It's just a certain discretion, which has to be… If we don't employ discretion, then life will become very ugly and rudimentary. Don't treat every temple like it's some kind of a place of worship, it's not a place of worship. So they're designed in a certain way for a certain purpose. It needs to be conducted that way, otherwise there'll be no meaning to it. Now this… you made a very sweeping statement, a prejudice from the spiritual dimension. I want you to understand, spiritually, there is no mention of menstrual cycles anywhere because spiritually you cannot have menstrual cycles. Only physiologically you can have, okay? So it's a physiological issue which reflects as a psychological factor in a certain segment of women, I wouldn't say everyone, but quite a substantial segment of women find a reflection of their physiological process in their psychological makeup, which is a fact that has to be taken care of. If this is being said only because some temples and other things have said women cannot enter at that time, you need to understand this, from where this comes from. Today's woman, you forget about her, okay? How she's equipped, how she's capable of handling her bodily needs and other things are a different matter. I want you to look back 1,000 years ago. What kind of sanitary facilities did she have? What kind of processes did she have? So, there could be issues about that, isn't it? It's only for that reason, they said, and above all, you need to understand the level of physical activity for a normal woman in those days cooking for 15, 20 people, taking care of the cows, taking care of the children, everything is hers. It's a tremendous amount of physical activity. So, the woman who is going through a certain process of her cycle, she gets 3 days, 4 days break from everything. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Because that's a time where it is almost like a molting period for a woman on one level. It's not as big as molting, but it's almost like that. That's a time where she needs to be cared for, protected, taken care of. Somebody else cooks for you, which never happens in her life. Every day she cooks. For those 3, 4 days, somebody else cooks for her, somebody else serves her food. She sits alone by herself, she meditates, she sings, she does prayer. Isn't this a good way of doing things, I'm asking? Do not consider this as today's life. Look back 1,000 years ago when these things were made. It was a very good way of protecting our women. But over a period of time, somebody makes this a discriminatory process. A woman should not come here, should not come there. That is just out of ignorance, certain things happen. It has nothing to do with the spiritual world, because if my mother did not have menstrual cycles, I wouldn't be born. Okay? Yes or no? We are born from that. If that is impure, our very birth is impure and the creation is impure. It's a ridiculous thought even to think like that. It is not because of purity and impurity this has come. It has come for practical reasons. Even today, I meet thousands of women who suffer a lot at that time because they still have to go to work, they still have to deal with everything. There are many of them who are on medication at that time just to keep their psychological balance. They would definitely enjoy rest. They would definitely enjoy a little bit of seclusion from everything that they are doing. But thinking it is pure, impure question is coming in a very rudimentary mind. It is no fundamental sense about life.
Namaskaram Sadhguru, I am Swapna from Fiji and I have a question on… Swapna from Fiji.
Fiji?
Fiji
oh,
Islands,
okay.
yes. Namaskaram. I have a question on the quality of being feminine. As Navratri is coming in 1 or 2 days, I would like to know if it is okay for menstruating women to offer prayers in our homes while we are on our menstruation cycle, or is it okay to go to a temple and offer our prayers while we are on a cycle? Whether it is okay or not okay, and if you can shed some light on this, please. Thank you.
The Indian origin people in Fiji are still 2 centuries ago. When you went there from India, you're still in the same place. Other Indian women have moved on. See, you must understand this, why these things were spoken in the past. One important thing is, see, there was never a holiday for a woman. You must understand this. Even now in many homes it's still true. Today is a holiday for everybody, office and school break means a woman is working overtime, okay? Maybe man is pitching in a little bit today, but those days it wouldn't be so. And there was not just one woman in the house, generally there were multiple women because joint families and stuff. I've been in a joint family where there were over 400 people. So nearly about 150 plus women are there. So out of this, some are taking care of children, some are cooking, some are cleaning, some are doing things. Distribution of labor is happening because men go out and work in the fields and stuff, women take care of these things. And I know there are some feminists, but let us look at this sensibly without any prejudice. Tell me, as a woman, on those days of the month, would you like a break? Yes. Especially if it's hard physical work that you're doing. Hello? Yes. If it's very hard physical work, because everything was physical in those days. Cooking was not like, you put it in the microwave, not like that. there's cutting, grinding, lifting, bringing water, enormous amount of physical labor. So those days, they said, you don't enter the kitchen, you be. Now puja, worship you're talking about. See, in my grandfather's place and all that, puja room is like a third of this hall. Huge, there are so many gods to be satisfied. Yes, dozens and dozens of gods and goddesses. The day a woman is allotted to do puja, because different days, different women are allotted so that… because puja is a strenuous process. To do puja means you must take some special water, not just some muddy water from somewhere, special water from that part of the river. You carry it, bring it, clean the puja room, prepare all these things, put flowers, make the prasadam, this, that, a whole lot of work. Worship is not simply, okay, it was an elaborate process. So again, she got a break. If she's at that time of the month, she doesn't have to do it. So generally she was given break from everything because that's the only holiday she got in a month. There are no Sundays, Mondays, Fridays, nothing for her. Every day is on and on and on. At least when she's… in a way, a woman is molting when this is going on, something of the old is going away and something new is beginning to form in the system. And above all, women did not have periods every month in those days because they had children and they were nursing the children. So 2-3 years they wouldn't have… if they have periods, it's only for a few months and again they're pregnant and it will go on. In her life, from the age of 14 to 45 or whatever, if she delivers 5-6 children, she might have seen maybe a few dozen periods, I want you to know. I met a lady in Syria where after her first period when she was 13 plus, she's never had a period till she's 50 because she always had children and children continuously. No, you may say, oh my God, now. At that time, I want you to understand, even in the beginning of 20th century, the population on the planet was only 1.6 billion. Today definitely is, oh my God. All right? So if you look back 1,000 years ago, what was our population? It was in a few 100,000 across the planet. So there's not enough human beings, only wild animals everywhere. And they pick up your babies and go away whenever they want. Yes. How many people in the… before, let's say, 18th century or before 16th century in this country, how many families have lost their children to tigers? Just find out, the statistics are astounding. Because almost every family would have lost one child to the tigers. Today you're worshipping the tigers because their numbers have diminished. But when they were breeding well, they were just eating all over the place. There was enough wildlife, but people had to go into the forest for so many things and, suppose a mother and child goes into the forest to pick something, when the tiger comes, the child doesn't run as fast as the mother, so child goes. As it is happening with the wildlife, the older ones will run faster, the younger ones get caught, the same thing. If you look at the stats, it's astounding number of children picked up. So, most women did not have a few dozen periods in their life, or maybe let us say 100 periods in her entire reproductive life. So those days, they said, take a break. From cooking, from worship, from your man, from everything. But today that's not the case. For most of the time, women are not in a reproductive process, that is not needed. So now this period is being looked at as a big thing because it's happening every month. It was never happening every month for most healthy women. It was happening once in a way. So those days they said, a break, don't have to do anything. Giving you freedom even not to pray is a tremendous relief. Hello? You don't have to cook for your family, you don't even have to serve God on that day, leave everybody alone, take care of yourself. Isn't it a wonderful process? We are looking at it from the wrong side of history, wrong side of times in which we are. So, you can go wherever you want.
Throughout history, there have been instances where individuals, predominantly men in positions of power, have enforced rules or practices related to menstruation that adversely affected women. Here are few historical figures associated with such actions. King Henry VIII of England. King Henry VIII's quest for a male heir led to significant turmoil for his wives, particularly Catherine of Aragon. As Catherine failed to produce a male heir, Henry sought an annulment of their marriage, citing her inability to conceive a male child. This decision was deeply influenced by prevailing beliefs about women's roles in producing heirs and their perceived shortcomings if they failed to do so. By using Catherine's menstrual cycle as a justification for the annulment, Henry reinforced the notion that a woman's worth was contingent upon her ability to fulfill her reproductive duties. This placed immense pressure on Catherine and other women in similar positions, as their value and status were directly tied to their fertility. King Oba Iwabre of Benin, Nigeria. Oral tradition suggests that King Oba instituted harsh menstrual taboos and regulations during his reign. Women who menstruated were reportedly forbidden from participating in certain activities and were segregated from the rest of society during their periods. This enforced isolation subjected menstruating women to social exclusion, stigma, and discrimination, effectively dehumanizing them during a natural biological process. Additionally, the severe punishment for violating these taboos instilled fear and control over women's bodies, further perpetuating gender inequality and reinforcing patriarchal power structures within the kingdom. Shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu of Japan. In feudal Japan, menstrual taboos were deeply ingrained in society, and Shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu reinforced their practices during his rule. Menstruating women were often segregated from the rest of society and subjected to various restrictions on their movements and activities. This segregation not only perpetuated the stigma surrounding menstruation but also reinforced general hierarchies and power dynamics within Japanese society. Women's bodies were policed and controlled, with menstruation seen as a source of impurity that needed to be regulated and contained for the preservation for social order and harmony. Sultan Muhammad II of the Ottoman Empire. Within the Ottoman Empire, Sultan Muhammad II's imposition of restrictions on the menstruating women in the imperial harem reflected broader societal attitudes towards women's bodies and sexuality. Women in the harem were subjected to strict rules regarding their menstrual cycles, including isolation during menstruation. This enforced isolation served to maintain the perceived purity and sanctity of the harem, as well as to uphold the honor of the Ottoman dynasty. Women's bodies were commodified and controlled within the harem, with menstruation viewed as disruption to the idealized image of feminine purity and chastity. Louis XIV of France. King Louis XIV, also known as Sun King, ruled France during the 17th and early 18th centuries. While Louis XIV is often celebrated for his grandeur and achievements in establishing absolute monarchy, his reign also saw the reinforcement of societal norms that marginalized women, including attitudes towards menstruation. In the royal court of Versailles, menstruation was a topic shrouded in secrecy and shame. Menstruating women were expected to conceal their periods and were often segregated from courtly activities during menstruation. This reinforced the notion of menstruation as a source of impurity and shame, perpetuating gender inequality and reinforcing patriarchal power structures within the French court. Thomas Jefferson, United States. Thomas Jefferson, the third president of United States, is known for his contributions to American democracy and the drafting of the Declaration of Independence. However, Jefferson's action and attitudes towards women, particularly enslaved women, reflected the prevailing beliefs of his time, including those related to menstruation. Enslaved women in colonial America were subjected to harsh working conditions and exploitation, including during menstruation. Jefferson's ownership of enslaved women meant that he held power over their bodies and reproductive health, with menstruation often viewed as a hindrance to their productivity. This exploitation of enslaved women's bodies reinforced gender and racial inequalities, perpetuating the marginalization and dehumanization of African American women in colonial America. Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph of the Islamic Caliphate, ruled during the 7th century and played a significant role in shaping early Islamic jurisprudence and social norms. While Umar is revered for his contributions to Islam, his rulings and attitudes towards women, including those related to menstruation, reflected the patriarchal norms of his time. During Umar's caliphate, menstruating women were often subjected to various restrictions and taboos in line with prevailing cultural beliefs about purity and impurity. Women were required to observe ritual purity, tahara, before participating in religious rituals or activities, and menstruation was considered a state of ritual impurity, janaba, and required purification before engaging in acts of worship or intimacy. Umar's ruling reinforced gender hierarchies and perpetuated stigma surrounding menstruation within early Islamic society, contributing to the marginalization and control of women's bodies and reproductive health. While Umar's legacy is complex and multifaceted, his actions related to menstruation reflect broader patterns of gender inequality and patriarchy within Islamic history. These historical examples underscore the way in which menstruation has been used as a tool to regulate women's behavior, maintain social norms, and uphold patriarchal power structures throughout history. The legacies of these actions continue to shape cultural attitudes and practices surrounding menstruation today, highlighting the ongoing need to challenge stigma, promote menstrual health and hygiene, and advocate for gender equality.